Hey, America, you remember that time when you tipped all that tea out in Boston Harbour?
Ooh, I remember.
Or what about that time when that Tommy Jefferson guy wrote the Dear John declaration letter that looked really, really nice until some prick called John Hancock put his posh John Hancock on it?
Remember?
Or remember when in 1814, a group of soldiers took a little trip along with Colonel Jackson down mighty Mississippi and kicked Britain's ass? It didn't work out well for Britain, but Jackson became the future 7th President of the United States of America.
I remember.
Well, how about we do this? Let's just pretend it all didn't happen, or that it was just a performance piece to keep Napoleon entertained. The whole declaration will just tell everybody it was Jefferson's kids' homework and he was so proud that he wanted everyone to see it. And the tea party thing in Boston Harbour, fuck 'em, I'm with you, tea tastes like crap. But we can say that was a protest about the treatment of the plantation workers or something. Let's just call the whole thing a piece of performance art that ended on the 5th of November. See, that's what the old remember the 5th of November thing was all about. Remember the 5th of November. Remember the performance is over. The actors take a bow. The conductor and the orchestra take a standing ovation, even though they fucked up the late 80s bit and our most majestic majesty and her racist, but only in a funny way, husband, applaud and applaud and applaud until their royal hands fall off. It's time to come back home, America. All is forgiven. The players all played out. I know you didn't mean it. And I know this all started on the idea of taxation without representation, but this monarch, the one we got now, is really cool. Okay, Theresa May is a bit of a skinny white Donald Trump, but Nicola Queen of Scots has got that covered. Don't ask, it's all cloak and claymore stuff, but she will be the powerhouse soon. And don't worry, we also had a system that meant we were paying a tax to another power that was making decisions on our behalf, and apparently we didn't get a say in it. We didn't get to elect them, so a whole heap of people got together and voted to leave this system. But then the head pig fucker didn't like it.
I
Oh, did I tell you that? Our last Prime Minister, David Cameron, fucked the pig. And I'm not joking. He actually put his most honourable cock into a dead pig's mouth because a heap of other pig fuckers told him he had to do it. What a fucking leader that is. Anyway, he quit because he is as weak as piss as far as a leader goes. So now we have an unelected government that's threatening to plunge the kingdom into the dark ages.
remember.
So maybe you guys coming here is not such a good idea after all. Does anybody get the number for Canada?
Hi, this is a voiceover robot. If you want to have each new podcast delivered as soon as it's released, go to skepticsmashtalk.com and subscribe.
Okay, so it's been a while actually since we had some Brexit updates, so I'll just go over the headlines, starting with the courts proceedings. So you know by now that the courts here have ruled that Mrs May must give the Parliament a vote on the Brexit itself and the terms of negotiation. Well, now we know that the government is appealing against this decision. And what they're appealing against as the government is that they believe that triggering the Article 50 does not negatively affect the people of the kingdom. And let's just put a pin in that for 1 second. What really bothers me is that Mrs May and her three-ring circus think that they can go through this process without consulting the Parliament on any matter. But what they are doing is masking this as the courts are allowing the Parliament to stop Brexit. That is not true. That is not what the courts have said. That there is something completely separate. The European Union Referendum Act of 2015 laid out the rules and the courts affirmed this on the 3rd of November. The referendum is advisory and the government needs to refer to the Parliament. So again, why does May not want to consult with the Parliament on the terms of the Brexit? And let me remind you that this is the same Theresa May that had reports changed against the evidence so that the final report suited her agenda. And there is something else that Mrs. May needs to contemplate before she appeals the court's decision. Mrs. May is the Prime Minister only because the pig fucker quit. There was not a general election, and to date, she refuses to call one. But let's go back to her claim that triggering Article 50 does not negatively affect the people of the kingdom. So far, and this is before anything officially happens, but so far, the following has occurred. The economy has tanked to a 30-year low. The physical exchange rate, I'm not talking about the advertised exchange rate, but the physical. When I give you £1 and you give me some euros back, it's at its lowest that I can ever remember. So bad that in some places, £1 is worth less than €1 in real terms. And inflation is all over the place, but bank interest rates are down to 0.25%, which is awesome for people like me. I've got fuck all savings and a mortgage. But the people at the other end, the ones that thought they were going to retire soon, they all have savings and investments. Well, like I've said before, they need to work 7 more years now just to be in the same place as they were on the 22nd of June this year. Hate crime is up. The public's perception of law and order is down. And surprise, surprise, net migration is up. And businesses are making the move to mainland Europe. The worst of it all, though, is the threat of the wildlings becoming independent. And if that happens, as I've said in the past, it will cause the fall of the British Empire. So if Theresa May does not think these few things that I've mentioned here already haven't had a negative effect on the people of the kingdom, then we may as well just give up now and become the 51st state of Trumplandia. Oh, and on that, it looks like Numbnuts Nigel has taken it upon himself to be the official spokesperson of the United Kingdom to the President-elect Dum Dum. But there's just one little problem. This interim leader of the smallest party in the UK Parliament is acting off his own back. If the photo of Dum Dum and Numbnuts in a gold-lined elevator didn't show how condescending these two pricks are, the two people that fooled everyone into thinking they were working-class heroes, nothing will. And maybe we deserve to have them wipe their muddy shoes on us. Anyway, Downing Street have dismissed claims that numbnuts will be used as a go-between for British ministers and the new Trump administration in the US, branding the interim UKIP leader an irrelevant. Now, this all began when the Daily Telegraph reported last Thursday that ministers will seek Farage's advice because they have no links to the president-elect's inner circle. And then Numbnuts Nigel said the relationship between Donald Trump's Republican Party and the Conservatives has completely broken down. All this according to the newspaper. But like I just said, Number 10 has strongly rejected the claims, and they did this on Friday morning with sources close to Theresa May telling the BBC Farage is an irrelevance. But for whatever reason, the lower third on Fox News reports has irrelevant Nigel as the leader of the opposition and also the person that led the Brexit battle. No Fox News. He is the interim leader of a party that holds one seat in Parliament, and his one MP can't stand him. And on that, the fat Malfoy led the shambles that was the Brexit. Irrelevant Nigel was just the prick that yelled fire. But let me finish the Brexit talk with this perler of a story. This is from The Independent. It reads, Crown prosecutors are considering a complaint that the Leave campaign misled voters during the EU referendum campaign. The complaint against Vote Leave and Leave.eu campaigns was submitted by academic experts in electoral law who suggest corrupt campaigning practices were used by campaigners. The group, led by Professor Bob Watt of the University of Buckingham, alleges that the Leave campaign made assertions of fact that were knowingly misleading. The falsehoods named include the high-profile claim that the EU was costing £350 million a week, a claim that Vote Leave continued to use despite repeated ticking offs by the UK Statistics Authority. Under UK electoral law, undue influence is considered a corrupt practice. The offence includes the use of fraudulent device or contrivance. Ultimately, it will be for Parliament to decide based on the court's judgment on evidence that there was undue influence. If that has a bearing on whether the EU referendum result should be considered as democratically safe. A Crown prosecution spokesperson said, "We can confirm that this letter has been received and we are currently considering its content. The complaint is being considered by a special team that deals with electoral crimes." Matthew Elliott, former executive of Vote Leave, said in response to the complaint, "We wish Bob Watt well." Under the 1983 Representation of the People's Act, the Director of Public Prosecutions can consider electoral offences when they are directly referred to her office, but not before then. And that answers the question as to why have they not looked at this yet. Okay, so there'll be more to come on that, and I, for one, am sort of looking forward to reading the reams and reams of paperwork generated on this, and I'm not being sarcastic there at all. But when the likes of the little lapdog Michael Gove channeled Dum Dum and said, "I think people in this country have had enough of experts," not only did he epitomise post-truth politics, he laid out the groundwork for others to follow, like Aaron Banks, the founder of the unofficial Leave.eu campaign, when he said, "Facts don't work. You've got to connect with people emotionally. It's the Trump success." Or when Andrea Leadsom, after she denied having disparaged rival Theresa May's childlessness in an interview with The Times, in spite of the transcript evidence. And this is a brilliant example, and it's things like that, even though the Leadsom example was not Brexit related, but items like that where they have made claims without proof or made a claim, then denied the statement with total disregard for any of the reporters that filmed and broadcast the statements, and the out-and-out blatant lies. Like when the Leave campaign said that immigration will fall, or we'll be able to stay in the single market, or that we will have decisions made by our elected officials, not from somewhere else or by somebody that we didn't choose. Like Theresa May, I'm assuming. And that we will make British laws and British courts, like we did on the right of the Parliament's sovereignty. But now all the Brexiteers are pissed off at that. Anyway, hopefully the Crown prosecutors will do their jobs and look at every individual line manipulation that was used to convince the credulous and the men and women of the kingdom that were lied to and told they didn't need to listen to experts. They just needed to listen to the clowns that can connect with them emotionally.
Hello, it is me again, the voiceover robot, while he has his blood pressure tablets. Don't forget to go to skepticsmashtalk.com for show notes and contact details. Also, don't you think my voice is more soothing than Jason's?
Okay, let's leave politics for a while. I think it's fairly safe to say that if you're listening to this, you're probably one of the same bent as most other people that, well, for whatever reason, enjoyed listening to some guy rant about stuff, including autism and its link, or to be correct, lack of link to vaccinations. And that's why I think you'll enjoy this next story. I've said in the past that my number 2 frustration now with the anti-vax movement is the amount of money that people with good intentions give the movement for research. We have researched the crap out of this. And the most recognised research that goes to support the anti-vax movement is that of not a doctor, Andrew Wakefield. And not only was this research not only thoroughly debunked, but it was used against him in his hearing when he was struck off the medical register. But there are others trying to prove a causal link. Now, recently, an autism advocacy group called Safe Minds funded research it hoped would prove vaccines cause autism in children. But this effort appears to have backfired, since the study that Safe Minds supported shows a link between autism and vaccines does not exist. Anyway, this story comes from richarddawkins.net with the words from Jessica Ferger. It reads, between 2003 and 2013, Safe Minds provided scientists from the University of Texas Southwestern School of Medicine, the University of Washington, the Johnson Center for Child Health and Development, and other research institutions with approximately $250,000 to conduct a long-term investigation evaluating behavioural and brain changes of baby rhesus macaques that were administered a standard course of childhood vaccine. The National Autism Association, another organisation that has questioned vaccine safety, also provided financial support for this research. The latest paper in the multi-year project was published a few weeks ago in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. In it, the researchers concluded that vaccines did not cause any brain or behavioural changes in the primates. So, are we going to keep funding this sort of bullshit, or are we going to tell parents that it's safe to vaccinate their children? That $250,000 could have gone towards any number of useful research projects that could actually make a difference. But no, we have to keep on this fucked up crusade that not a single piece of research has actually showed any signs of proof of at all. Not even close. Is fraudulent researchers and brain-dead celebrity word rememberers that keep this bullshit going on. And now the research that they are funding is proving themselves wrong. And what are they saying about this? Okay, so in this segment, I'm going to do something just a little bit unusual and probably unexpected, but that's because it's the right thing to do. I'm going to take the side of and defend the Roman Catholic Church. Well, in a very narrow way, that is. What am I on about? Well, let's start with the monasteries. As I'm sure you all know, monasteries and monks and nuns are well known when it comes to scientific discoveries. One of my favourites was Gregor Mendel and his P's leading to our understanding of genetics. And did you know that Charles Darwin was once destined for a life in the cloth? In fact, him not going down that path is completely irrelevant to his work and his voyages to the Galapagos or evolution. In fact, the church was very supportive of his findings at the time. And then we have the likes of Copernicus and Georges Lemaitre, the guy that gave us the Big Bang Theory. He was a Belgian priest. We have Cassegrain and William of Ockham, Jean Picard, Collier. The list goes on and on and on. But where now the churches are ignorant of science, it is a recent and actually quite a localized phenomenon in most cases. And in many cases, this is because science has picked apart the bedtime stories that many die-hard God-botherers hold as gospel. So rather than use the tool on that which one of their own developed, and of course I'm talking about William of Ockham, they prefer to ignore the science. And I know it feels like it's the majority of religions that completely ignore science, but this is a result of our own atheist echo chambers. It's not completely really true. Even the Vatican has scientists. In fact, they have the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, which was refounded in 1936. And I want to read 3 quotes from 3 popes on the matter, but essentially, if you don't get it from my shitty translations, they all say that science and religion can coexist even if it doesn't agree. More importantly, the pontiffs only want the scientists to find out truth. Pope Pius Part 11 said of the students, through their work and our institution, work even more and more and ever more effectively for the progress of the sciences. Of them, we do not ask anything else, since this praiseworthy intent and this noble work in the service of the truth is what we expect of them. Pope John Paul II once emphasized the role and the goals of the Academy on the 100th birthday of Albert Einstein. He said the existence of this Pontifical Academy of Sciences, of which in its ancient history Galileo was a member, and of which today eminent scientists are members, without any form of ethnic or religious discrimination, is a visible sign raised amongst the peoples of the world of the profound harmony that can exist between the truths of science and the truth of faith. The Church of Rome, together with all the churches spread throughout the world, attributes a great importance to the function of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences. And most recently, in November 2012, Pope Benedict Cumberbatch XVI told members of the Academy, dialogue and cooperation between faith and science are urgently needed for building a culture that respects people and the planet. Without faith and science informing each other, the great questions of humanity leave the domain of reason and truth and are abandoned to the irrational, to myth, or to indifference, with great damage to humanity itself, to world peace, and to our ultimate destiny. I am convinced of the urgent need for continued dialogue and cooperation between the worlds of science and of faith in building a culture of respect for man, for human dignity and freedom, for the future of our human family, and for the long-term sustainable development of our planet. Okay, so it sounds like I might be being a little soft on the pontificals right there, but credit where it's due. The Vatican, although it's had a mixed history in the past of its acceptance of science, it's not silly enough now to deny it. And if I need to give them a slight pass on the whole magical sky daddy thing and the carpenter's son that can't cap water in his hands anymore, in return for the betterment of science and the possible literal salvation of the planet, by the hand of science that is, not a deity, then I shall do so. But the other stuff, no, they don't get a fucking pass on that. Anyway, that's all a preamble for something that's not quite related to science in religion. Rather, it's about pseudoscience in pseudo-religion. But first, I need to go back to the monks. There's a long and ancient tradition in monasteries to be self-sufficient. In fact, the 48th chapter of the Rule of St. Benedict states, "For then are they monks in truth, if they live by the work of their hands." This means if they want to eat or drink, they either need to make it themselves or make a product that they can sell or trade in order to raise the money to buy what they need, or both. And it's this that fascinates me. It's their dedication to the life in the monastery. Now, you can, and I will, argue that for many of the most vocal religious fanatics, they are in one way or another in it for money or the fame or for the promise of money or fame. But the monks have nothing and they want nothing. And what they need, they make or they trade. So no matter your thoughts on religion, as a whole, you have to have some sort of admiration for this lot and their lifestyle. Anyway, if you finish writing me the email about the one monk that you know that embezzled funds or whatever, let's just move on. So monastery products were always readily available throughout Europe, but as they aren't mass producers, getting into mass markets outside of Europe is difficult, especially when it comes to food products, but not so much when it comes to tasty beverages. Such spirits like Benedictine and Chartreuse, very good examples, as are the Trappist and Abbey beers. Now, combine all that with the brilliant resurgence of artisan food and drink over the last few decades. This is when we went from the convenience of fast food and the TV dinners and fluffy white bread to slow-cook, locally sourced ingredients and traditional recipes. And okay, granted, in many cases, this went too far and we ended up with a hamburger worth more than a second-hand car. But when it comes to beer and the beer world, you can't fake this. You can't pop up a ye olde stone building on the south end of Marin County, put on a habit, refuse to talk, and make Trappist beer to be sold to the masses. You just won't get away with it. Beer consumers are not that stupid. But some consumers are consumers of woo. And if that offends, then you can take that as it's intended. And all this leads me to a group of nuns who set up an abbey in a northern Californian farm to produce and sell medicalized products made from cannabis. Now, according to their Facebook page, their mission is to put prayers for healing intention into every jar and every bottle of natural medicine they make, and to help spread the good word about cannabis. And they say that they make their medicines by moon cycles according to an ancient tradition, sowing prayer and healing intention into every bottle and jar. Now, further googleometering tells us the nuns are actually two ladies, and the pair produced salves, tonics and tinctures from the plants they were selling on Etsy. And for those who don't know, and I didn't, Etsy is a peer-to-peer commerce website focused on handmade or vintage items and supplies, as well as unique factory manufactured items. And you know what? Let's just call it what it is. It's eBay for hippies. Anyway, the pair were selling on Etsy their products, saying their products were for pain management. The problem there was Etsy don't allow sellers to make certain claims or sell drugs, so they had to shut them down. Luckily, though, through a GoFundMe campaign, they were able to start up their own e-commerce site. Now, the products they sell contain an oil derived from a certain strain of cannabis that is said to have medicinal benefits. It's high in CBD, but has only small traces of THC. That's the psychoactive component that causes people to get high. Let me explain this before I go on. They are not selling what you or I would call pot. The THC in pot is what gets you high when you smoke it or do whatever you do with it, not the CBD. Also, I'm sure you have heard of hemp and how hemp is not pot or marijuana. Well, it's way more complicated than I have the capacity to explain, and how I'm going to explain this is not quite true, but true enough that we can move on. The cannabis that's used for hemp is brilliant for hemp. For centuries, it was used for everything from clothing to ropes for battleships, you name it. It's a fibrous material, but it's useless when it comes to getting high, apparently. So the nuns aren't Cheech and Chonging it. And when the media went on a frenzy a while back talking about the nuns that like to get high and sell you creams and potions to get you high, they were talking out their asses. Anyway, back to the nuns. They say we make CBD oil, which takes away seizures and a million other things. They said in a ABC interview, it's very high in demand from cancer patients right now. In the same interview, they said that they make a salve that's a multi-purpose salve, and that they have found that it cures migraines, hangovers, earaches, toothaches, and diaper rash. The sisters told ABC that while they don't really spend much time praying, the purpose of making cannabis-based medicine is a spiritual existence. Now, let me stop there a second and explain. I'm not saying that any extract from cannabis does or does not do anything as far as medical treatment is concerned. I haven't done any research, and I've done nothing and read not enough to form any opinion on the matter. A cursory look around PubMed shows promise, and there's some good work, I believe, when it comes to neurological disorders. This isn't the point of the story. I shall leave such investigations to much smarter people than me. No, the reason I'm telling this story is that there's one very major problem. They aren't sisters of any order at all. They don't even live in an abbey. They've not had any religious affiliation as far as I can find, and no theological training or background at all. In fact, one of them last year was flipping burgers while attending community college. She was introduced to the other one, Sister Kate, by a mutual friend. Sister Kate, also known as Sister Occupy, first took the habit of wearing a habit during the Occupy movement as a costume. And as I look around more, I see that there is nothing. So on their Facebook page, there is nothing that says they are not nuns. Nothing on their GoFundMe page. It's a story unto itself. Let me give you the main bits from it, though. That is from their GoFundMe page. This is what they've got to say. They say, we have a product to sell, but our store is closed. We have CBD infused oils and CBD multi-purpose salve. We have product, just at the moment, no store to sell them in. Etsy is the world's largest portal for homemade, handmade goods. We thought it the best place to feature our homemade and handmade goods, but not long ago, they were bought by eBay, And yesterday, after 9 months of no issues, they rudely took all of our items off our shelf, alleging that we make health claims. And that's probably because you were. Anyway, they go on. We are here sitting with unfinished construction projects that make it hard to finish unpacking at the farm. We owe money to the general contractor and the electrician. A salary supplement for the supporting team would prevent the hard, dedicated helpers of the sisters from having their badly needed hours reduced. We have to pay for new ducting for the Abbey because they are crushed or eaten by rodents. We can't turn on the heat in the Abbey. If we turn on the heat, it blows out into the universe. All of this adds up to $10,000. If we reach that goal, we can get through this Etsy store transition without fear, and we accept community help only because it's a temporary situation as we steady our e-commerce store on firmer shores. It bothers us to ask the public for money. It puts us too much in the domain of what traditional religions have done for centuries. Pick the people's pockets. But our operations have just taken a bat to the knee of the FDA, in brackets, a wholly owned subsidiary of Big Pharma. And we need bridge money to get us through safely. We need to continue our operations of serving the suffering with our natural remedies. They go on to say, if we get more than the money requested, we will get to roll out a wholesale program. There are many stores around the world that want to buy our products wholesale and sell them in their stores, but we need to be able to fund much bigger batches before we can do that. If we get more money, we will spend it on security so we can use this farm as it was intended, as a cannabis farm. Okay, so there's a few little hints in there for the observant, especially when they say that asking for money is the realm of traditional religions. But that's quite a bit different to what these two women actually are. So let's just call it. What are they? They are two hippies that started a barker business and figured they would use the minute fame that one of them got for wearing fancy dress one time at an Occupy rally. Neither of the pair have written or have had published any scientific papers or have had any scientific or medical training, or as far as I can tell, worked in any field of medicine. According to Business Insider, they have said, no matter what we read about cannabis in the last 20 years, we didn't listen to it, Sister Kate says, because we knew we were dealing with a healing plant. We knew intuitively, without having the science to back us, that it was being demonized. But if they read any of the literature, they may have found that while transdermal absorption of CBD is very possible, it does require a small amount of enhancer. And in most scenarios, but when combined with a topical gel, for instance, for arthritis, the results are actually promising. But there's a difference here. This is a laboratory testing being done at measurable levels using the scientific method and double-blind testing, although mostly on animals. The similarity between what the two costume farmers are doing and actual science is the similarity of me taking an aspirin or going to chew on the bark of a willow tree. And this is what really pisses me off. There is real potential as far as medical advances are concerned with cannabis. And now that more states actually voted to decriminalize pot than voted for Hillary Clinton, the research market will open up vastly. There will be more and better research because there is now more and better money in growing the raw ingredient. But what do you think these two will be saying when actual science does its actual sciencing and we get a new and better painkiller? Will they then be denouncing Big Pharma for making the product that they are making without even the smallest of knowledge of pharmacology? No, Big Pharma will always be bad, and so will their products. So when Big Pharma improves the process, you can guarantee the hippies will fight back and ground up turtle pubes will be the next panacea de jour. But as it stands right now, all we have is two hippies pretending to be nuns. They're wearing costumes, that's all. They're calling a half-dilapidated house an abbey and begging for people to give them the money to support their failing business. They make their concoctions according to the phases of the moon, obviously not understanding the requirement for light or photosynthesis, or how the phases of the moon are nothing more than the results of the positioning of 3 celestial bodies. I'm so fucking glad we only have one moon. Can you imagine it? If we had 2 or 3, we would have 2 or 3 orders of magnitude more con artists convincing the credulous that they need to buy their particular brand of 3 moon woo. And that's all these two are doing. They are selling the woo in just the same manner as the homeopaths are, and the naturopaths, and the bleach up the arse to cure autism paths. But they have refused to read or believe in anything that the world of science has produced on the matter, because according to them, they are dealing with a healing plan. They don't need science. They don't need evidence. They just need a costume and a moon and your money. Okay, I'm not going to talk too much on the US general election today. I think I've done enough of that in the last few weeks, but there are a few points I need to talk about. To start with, the riots. Well, they were always going to happen, no matter who won. And there's a little bit of evidence that some paid troublemakers are causing problems as well. But all in all, a crowd is a crowd, and normal rules of civility, for some reason, go out the window. But anyway, the crowd's a mass, so there's going to be trouble. And the minions on the right are talking shit about the people that wanted democracy are now protesting against it. These are the same minions that said they were arming up to march on Washington if Trump didn't win. Like I said, no matter what happened, there was going to be civil unrest. I guess the upshot of a Trump victory is, apart from one instance that I've heard of so far, there have been no guns in the street. And this is something that scares me come mid-December when the electors actually elect the president. By then, the streets will have settled down, hopefully. And it's a rare thing, but if enough electors go against the ballot and turn faithless, and I expect there will be a few, but if there are enough and the result is overturned, I don't even want to think about what happens there. But for now, and back to the streets, I want to read you something, and I quote, "We can't let this happen. We should march on Washington and stop this travesty. Our nation is totally divided." End quote. And that was from Donald J. Trump on the 7th of November, 2012. Now, I Twittered him and asked if this was still a thing we need to do, but he hasn't got back to me, so I assume he's still on a Twitter timeout. But while we're on Twitter, anyone that thought that it was a good idea to vote third party rather than vote for your own party for the person you despise, I give you this from Dr. And I still can't bring myself to correctly say this, but it's Dr. Jill Stein when she tweeted, "People of colour have been violently oppressed in America for over 500 years. We have never had a post-racial society." Now, I admire her sentiment, and amongst the 1,700 troll posts, literally 1,700 troll posts to reply to her, I offered her the following mathematical correction. People of colour have been violently oppressed in America ever since the first African slaves were brought to the North American colony of Jamestown, Virginia in 1619, 400 years ago. But you know what? If we can forgive a president for being illiterate, we can at least do the same thing for the innumerate, right? But I want to finish this segment on a serious note. So you know I keep talking about history and looking towards history. Well, if you really want to learn from history, you either need to invent a time machine or listen to the words of Ken Burns. And this is what he said on Donald Trump. The idea that he can attack and attack and attack whole groups of people, and that we live in a media culture where that's permitted to be tolerated, it's the spectacle and not the truth. This is what happened with Hitler in Germany. He tried a crazy rhetoric and was surprised when nobody pushed back on it. So he just kept saying it, doubling and tripling down. And then look what happened to the German people. Okay, I just wanted to get through one piece of feedback for today. This came a little while ago, and it's from somebody that wants to be kept anonymous, and you'll see why as we get through. So, they write, "Hi Jason, I was also recently a target of what you call the super mega lefty social justice warrior trolls for a very similar reason. I'm also autistic and dyslexic and have speech and social anxiety problems and am normally housebound, but I use Twitter to socialize. I found talking about myself and making humor from the things that depress me helps. It helps a lot. In fact, whenever anyone uses a term to try and hurt me, I find a way of making that into a joke. I hope one day I'll be able to put together a full stand-up comedy show. I just have to work out how I will do this without having anxiety attacks. Like I said, I think a similar person attacked and trolled me, and they did it for some time, and others started joining in, so I had to delete my account and start over again. I reported this to Twitter, and they said they didn't see anything wrong. I called the police, but because I live in a different country, they said they couldn't do anything. What was the most hurtful part of all this is that I think the person is pretending to be disabled and pretending to be an advocate to get people following them so that they have a good collection of targets ready for when they say a word that they decide is offensive. I was really upset about this for a month or so, and listening to you talk about yourself and how you deal with things helped me a lot. And now, for the past 6 weeks, I've been really active on Twitter again, but I haven't followed the people I used to because I'm scared that this person will find me again and start over. Anyway, I have a question for you. Do you think that this person would say the things that they say to a black person that uses the M word or a gay person that calls himself an F word? Thanks for listening. Please keep anonymous." Okay, well, there's a lot in that, and it's quite worrying too. Now, I deliberately didn't use the name of the Twitter troll just in case they had a hacked account or there was some sort of psychological issue that the person is dealing with. I kind of doubt it. And I think the listener has hit the nail on the head, but also I don't want anyone listening to go on a crusade and give them a little bit of their own back. There's no need for that. But to the listener, it's a shame that you have had to go through all of this, and it's a real shame how much of a toll this has taken on you, and the fact that you had to start your whole Twitter account over and over again. On that, my only advice is that whenever you think there is someone that's trying to have a go at you, don't even fight back. Just block them. Don't engage with them at all. It's just not worth it. And not related to this instance at all, but just as I'm thinking about it, and we're talking about trolls and bots, there's been a strange phenomenon that I've noticed this week. A shitload of so-called accounts have unfollowed me, all within a few hours of each other. I'm talking about 200 or so followers, and I think they have either all been bots or some sort of collection of trolls somehow linked in with the general election. But if anybody else has noticed this, get in touch with me at skepticsmashtalk.com. Anyway, to the question of the N and F words. So I said a while ago that I didn't think anyone has the right to tell someone else that they should or shouldn't be offended by any words. Now, I still stick to that, but these are 2 words that I will not use. And it's not because I think that I shouldn't, because they are offensive, and of course they are, but for a whole different reason. Remember when Muhammad Ali said this?
Conscience won't let me go shoot my brother or some darker people or some pro-hungry people in the mud for big, powerful America and shoot them for what? They never called me nigger. They never lynched me. They never put no dogs on me. They never robbed me of my nationality.
See there, Ali used the M word as the same context, or in the same context, as shooting and lynching and all the other atrocities that the African Americans were facing. But this was also the time when the African Americans started to take the M word not as a pejorative term or an insult, but they took it for themselves and used it as a power word. And it was long and it was slow. And I think now as a culture, well, the progressive side of our culture, we agree and accept that there is a vile and disgusting history directly related to that word, and that whenever it's used by any non-African American, it's only ever used as a word of hate. And it's the same as the F word when it comes to the LGBT community. It's a word that the LGBT community took back, and they took it as a power word. They took the power away from the bigots. They appropriated it in a way that meant there were no grey areas. And I'll go on a rant about that terminology. I mean the euphemism treadmill, that's the chain that went from the M word, the blacks to African Americans to whatever the next one will be. Like I say, but that's for another time. But to the question, do I think that this person would say the things that they say to a black person that uses the M word or a gay person that calls himself an F word? No, not at all. From what I saw personally and what you have told me, I think that this person or this type of person targets people that they think are weaker than them. They seek out people that have already had a pretty shitty time and have been battered down as far as they can get. So you know what that makes them, don't you? Nothing more than just cowards and bullies. Okay, so I started the show today with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek look at history, and I talked about Old Hickory, the 7th president of the United States. But I want to finish the show today with a not-so-much tongue-in-cheek look at this particular man. Now, I know history can wash away sins, but everything we know about Andrew Jackson is the personification of what a president needs to be. And being that we just had Armistice Day, it would be a shame not to consider Jacko's military history, even the time he chased the British out of the country. And when I say chase, I'm not talking about how George Bush sat on his fat ass and let the military do its thing until it was safe enough for him to go and drop in on a carrier for his mission accomplished speech, closely followed by our mission continues speech and we have a difficult work to do in Iraq speeches. No, Jacko was leading the battle from the front with nothing more than a sabre to defend himself. And that's where he got his nickname. His troops said he was as tough as Old Hickory on the battlefield. And he showed this toughness 6 years earlier when he fought a duel with a person that insulted his wife. Jackson's opponent shot first, hitting Jackson in the chest, but he stood there firm and stood fast, calm, took aim and shot and killed his opponent. Apparently, Jackson dug out the bullet and kept it with him for the rest of his life. Can you imagine the fat orange Joffrey doing that? The guy that dodged the draft due to a bone spur but was a champion on the sports field at the same time, the same fat orange twat that later saying avoiding getting the clap from all the tang he was grabbing was his own private Vietnam. Anyway, as a dyslexic, this is what I admire about President Jackson the most. In 1833, the administration of Harvard decided to bestow an honorary directorate of laws on the now President Jackson. Many Harvard alums, looking down their noses at the rough, uncouth and ill-educated Jackson, were outraged, none more so than John Quincy Adams, the 6th president of the United States of America, who had his overly educated butt handed to him in the election of 1812 by one Andrew Jackson. Adams gave his cousin, the president of Harvard, an ear-bashing on the matter, saying, "As an affectionate child of our alma mater, I would not be present to witness her disgrace in conferring the highest literary honours on a barbarian who could not write a sentence of grammar and hardly could spell his own name." But the Harvard administration responded to critics by noting that it had bestowed such degrees on other presidents and it could not fail to do so on the grounds of simple partisanship. And Jackson accepted the degree gracefully. Now, after the Latin speeches were given, he was urged to respond in kind, now that he was a doctor of laws. So Jackson got up and with very good humour said, "E pluribus unum, my friends. Sine qua non." And the two listeners that actually understood that are pissing themselves laughing right now. Trust me, it's hilarious. Later on, he got off a better quip in response to his critics. He said, "It's a damn poor mind indeed which can't think of at least 2 ways to spell any one word." Anyway, if you're playing at home, the Latin phrase translates to out of many, one, and that's the motto of the USA. Sine qua non in legal vernacular is a circumstance in which a certain act is a material cause of a certain injury or wrongdoing, without which the injury would not have occurred. So if you missed it, Jacko was reciting the only Latin he could possibly know. But for fuck's sake, don't get caught speaking Latin in America right now, or Trump will have you deported for jerking all the germs.
You saw a Chevrolet in Tokyo. It doesn't exist, folks. They beat us all the time.
This is bullcrap. I ain't standing for this. We're going to hell.
When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity.
They took our jobs.
That's right. A lot of people up there can't get jobs. They can't get jobs because there are no jobs. Because China has our jobs and Mexico has our jobs. They all have our jobs.
Take our job.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. The American dream is dead.
Okay, what do you think? That's about enough for me this week, you reckon? Well, thanks for joining me. Please do what you can as far as liking and sharing and hearting and lolsing and keeping spreading the word. I'm doing a bit in the background as far as these books in schools are concerned, but like I keep saying, it's going to take a fair few of us to make this work. I'll have more news on this in a few weeks, but for now, I don't need your money, I just need you to spread some words. Also, thanks to everyone that's got in touch over the last few weeks. I am truly sorry that I haven't had the chance to read any feedback out on the show. But with all the stuff that's been going on, and releasing 5 shows in 2 weeks, I've had to do all that I can to get as much done as I can. But I really appreciate the support and all the feedback, so please keep doing this. And if you want to get in touch, if you've got any feedback, go to skepticsmashtalk.com and there you'll find all the contact details. Oh, while I'm talking about producing too many shows, last week I did a YouTube live hangout with 2 guys in America. One that's about to open a brewery and another guy that does a podcast on brewing and the brewing and beer culture in the United States. Now you can watch that now on YouTube. Just go to skepticsmashtalk.com for the links. But I'm also editing the audio so that it can fit into a podcast somewhere. Now, the audio is not going to be great, being that it was done on YouTube, but it's quite listenable. And I'll have that out as a separate show either later on this week or early next week. But until then, and until next time, I've been Jason Jones, and this has been Skeptic Smash Talk.
They took our job. They took our job. They took our job. They took our job.